Okay, guys, I'm going to talk to you today about social and ecological footprints. Now, this year, being 2022, this topic is going to come up in the exam, which means that they're going to be actually assessing it in quite a lot of detail. So we need to know a good amount about this. There's many subtopics that we'll go through with this, and there's some practice questions at the end that you can have a go at. And I'll do my best to explain this as succinctly as I can. So let's jump into it. So ecological and social issues in relation to mining. So mining is a really complicated process of removing materials from the Earth's crust. Now, this is done in different ways. The image on the right here shows what we call a surface level mine. So this is a mine where they've identified that there's certain raw materials in the Earth's crust there, and so they dig down until they get below the waterline, and then they'll find there whatever they're looking for, like minerals or coal. You tend to get deeper underground, but yeah, it might be metals or minerals or something like that they're mining for. So to do this, you can actually see there's a sort of spiral that goes down inside these holes here. And so what they do is they gradually excavate the land, and when they get to the waterline, they actually have to blast the water out to remove it. So they actually have a dry sort of pit which they can then mine from. Now, obviously, mining, there's loads of issues around this. Obviously, the positives are that obviously it gives us the natural resources that manufacturers need to be able to make stuff. The big downside, of course, is that it causes a lot of pollution, and pollution in various ways. I think, first of all, by looking at this image here, we can see that it's actually sort of almost visual and environmental or more ecological pollution. Actually, I mean, these look ugly. If you're going for if you're living in this area, for example, it's pretty unsightly to suddenly have this massive, huge open level mine that's excavated near where you live, and depending on where you are, that can have effects. Like, it can drop property prices in that area, or it can suddenly make it can change a whole town's demographic as well. The positives, obviously, with anything like this are that it can create a lot of jobs. So if a mine is suddenly built in an area, at the moment, a lot of, say, lithium is mined for battery cells in Chile. Now, obviously, that will create, wherever those lithium mines are, that will potentially create a lot of jobs. A lot of diamonds are mined in African countries. A lot of gold is mined in South Africa. That creates huge amount of jobs for local populations, and of course, we need that. Like, people need those things to be able to survive. So that's the big dilemma, really, with mining is that it creates jobs, but it also causes a lot of pollution. I want to talk a bit more now about the actual pollution that it creates. So, first of all, we get atmospheric pollution, because obviously you need big machinery to do this excavation, and all these things requires lots of lorries and excavators and diggers and huge earth excavators to actually remove the material, to remove the soil, to actually get to the minerals and metal ores that they're mining. So that's one, and that will cause a lot of atmospheric pollution anyway. Second of all is the sort of ecological pollution, which we talked about. So that's the visual pollution we get from this, but also the destruction of natural habitats. If you look at this landscape, you can see this is obviously a wetlands area. So in wetlands like this, there'll be a lot of marine life living there. Depending on where it is in the world, there'll be all sorts of different species that will have this area as their home. And suddenly humans come along, we dig these massive holes into the ground, and that's going to start slowly destroying the natural habitats for those animals around in that area. So it's not great. And you can see we've got this sort of access road that's been carved into the land as well. And so destruction of habitats for animals is really bad, obviously, but it also can happen for humans. I mean, depending where you are, the Amazon rainforest, for example, which we'll talk about in a minute, for deforestation, that's huge. Like, that can destroy indigenous people's homes and their livelihoods and things. So it's a real issue that you get with this mass material harvesting. Another one as well, which we don't often realize with mining, is actual chemical pollution going into the ground. What I mean by this is we've got all sorts of chemicals which are used to help extract material from the ground. So these could be like mercury, for example. And what will happen is all of these materials, chemicals, whatever, they will eventually make their way into the soil, into water, and then when they get into touch with water, they will then be, they will eventually find their way to humans, and they'll also contaminate and cause a lot of death of animals as well. Like if in this mine here there's a lot of cobalt, for example, that's leaked into the water here, that will obviously go to the fish. Now the fish might not die, but they'll be contaminated, and if there's people that then fish in these lakes here, they will then also ingest that cobalt as well. So all in all, it's pretty bad. So it has to be very carefully controlled. And obviously, when you watch the video down here about the gold mining, where this is done right around where humans live, like there's a very, very high level of contamination. Like people use these water supplies for washing their clothes and for drinking and for cooking, and generally for sort of running the townships that they live in. So when you've got mining that's then contaminating that water source, it's terrible. That will wreck that can wreck the whole livelihood of the people that live in that area. So excuse me, that's really where we get to with mining. It's used for all sorts of things. Now, we can end up getting deforestation from it as well, and depending on what you're mining, because there's all sorts of different materials that are spread all around the world, and things like oil are mined all over. I mean, technically oil is drilled, but it's still sort of under earth excavation. Coal, a massive amount of coal. It's still, I mean, coal is crazy. It still provides like 40% of the Earth's energy, electricity power. And that's dug from deep underground. That's what we call deep level mines. They're the sort of traditional ones you'd imagine with like a sort of like an elevator going down into the ground, and they're very, very deep level. But at the moment, there's actually a mass shortage of lithium and cobalt, which is needed for production of lithium-ion batteries, because battery demand has gone up so much now. There's a huge, huge demand for it, and that demand is only going up and up and up. And literally at the moment, the supply can't keep up with the demands. Like at the moment, there's just not enough mines mining lithium, and there's a problem now where like there just isn't enough of that material to be able to satisfy the demands of the manufacturers and the companies that are making like electric vehicles and phones, and basically any electronics has a lithium. Any reusable, rechargeable electronic product probably has a lithium-ion battery in it. So it's a big issue. And that's the thing with mining. So many of the things that we use, in fact, nearly all apart from timbers and maybe a few other materials, they are all mined from underground. So they are finite resources. So it's a big issue.